If society's slope was any slipperier, a serial creep like Jeffrey Epstein could find himself ingratiated among the ranks of our elites. I'm talking about the rich, the famous, the powerful, the ones who guide our culture and. Oh, we really are fucked. Never tell them who I am. Well, how dang, I'm a man. 6 shooters in both my hands. I'm a cold-blooded brother, a real bad mother. Watch out, honey, here I am. So I have this story here from the Washington Free Beacon, and this actually is not a new story. It was just recently sent to me, and I thought it was worth reporting on. It came out, I think, in August. So, New Jersey Democrat lobbied against sex offender registry. Then lobbyist Malinowski, this is, I think, New Jersey Democrat Tom Malinowski, decried harsher sentences for sex offenses against children as unfair. That's the Democrats, everybody. That is today's modern left. And before I get into too much of my own commentary here, let me go ahead and tell this story about Tom Malinowski here. So, New Jersey Democratic Congressman Tom Malinowski fought against the establishment of the National Sex Offender Registry as the top lobbyist for the Human Rights Watch, according to a review of congressional records and lobbying disclosures. Why is it that all of the, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, all of these so-called, rights and liberty organizations have gone so far left that they are now protecting people that are child abusers? It's not good. It's not good. I mean, you see, even all these organizations like the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, they don't even care about civil liberties anymore. They are just a far left organization. Southern Poverty Law Center is the worst of it, the SPLC. But we've seen all of these organizations have been infested by this left-wing ideology that essentially has no moral compass whatsoever, yet seems to have a sense of moral superiority over the people who actually do have a moral compass. Oh no, we're discriminating against pedophiles. Yeah, we're supposed to. That's the moral and decent thing to do, is to not give people who abuse children proper standing in this world. A place to thrive in this society. No, not at all. So, prior to assuming office, the Democrat opposed a 2006 crime bill that imposed tougher penalties on sexual predators, including a permanent record on the National Sex Offender Registry for violent offenders who victimize children. He and his fellow lobbyists argued in a letter to Congress that no legitimate community safety justification exists to create such a registry, which they warned will put offenders at risk of retaliation and discrimination. No, so you have no right to know that your next door neighbor was convicted of child abuse. I think you do. If you have children, you should know if you are living near somebody who is a threat to your children. And I'm sorry, the risk of retaliation and discrimination against pedophiles does not get placed above the safety and well-being of the children. What is with the priorities of the left? It's absolutely disgusting. I mean, they'll literally defend anybody these days. In fact, it was funny. I saw a tweet thread the other day it was something about Trump and Hitler, and they were saying, well, at least Trump was this, and then somebody followed up, or no, at least Hitler was this, and then somebody else was like, yeah, Andy was this, and then another was like, Andy was a vegetarian. It's like, hold on, you guys are now just praising Hitler. Like, you're not even going after Trump anymore. Now you're just praising Hitler. Like, it's amazing how the left will work themselves into these thought cycles, and they end up finding themselves defending the indefensible. It really is a sort of cancer of the mind, this leftist ideology that people lose track entirely of where their moral compass, where their moral foundation is, or at least should be. So crime, even a crime that involves sexual misconduct, should not be a license to run roughshod over principles of fairness and proportionality, the group wrote in a letter signed by Malinowski's colleague. Now, sexual misconduct, that is a very broad term. There's a difference between, yeah, I was drunk and I grabbed her ass, I shouldn't have done it, and violating a child. Huge, huge difference. And in my first example, I was talking about a full-grown woman, to be clear. That's, very, very different. So, Malinowski first rose to prominence when the Obama administration tapped him to become Assistant Secretary for Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor at the State Department in 2014, the Deep State Department. The White House chose him because they liked Malinowski's reputation as a good guy lobbyist. Doesn't seem like too good of a guy to me if he doesn't see something that says, or if he sees something that says child abusers should be left off a registry because there's no justifiable reason for putting them through that. Yeah, there's a totally justifiable reason. It's called families in the neighborhood need to know who's a threat to their children. Seems like a totally justifiable reason. Because that's what happens with a lot of this abuse is it's cyclical. A lot of abusers were abused as children. So you end up creating this cycle where you create more abusers. And, I'm sorry for anybody who went through that abuse. It does not justify you growing up to commit that same abuse. In fact, it's almost worse in many ways because you know the damage that it causes. You know what it did to your psyche. Why would you want to do that to somebody else? Bear that burden in silence, whatever you got to do. But you don't abuse children. So, where was I? Oh yeah, according to the Center for Responsive Politics. But Malinowski's earlier efforts to block a widely popular effort to hold sex predators accountable complicates his legacy as a Beltway lobbyist. Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say it more than I wouldn't even say it complicates it. I would say it downright tarnishes it. As a freshman representative, Malinowski has frequently touted his tenure at Human Rights Watch to bolster his credentials as a human rights crusader. His campaign did not respond to requests for comments about whether the congressman stands by his previous lobbying efforts against the sex offender bill. If he didn't comment, I would think that means he still stands by it. Because why would you not jump on the opportunity to say, yeah, I don't know what I was thinking back then? Especially given all of the light that has been shined onto the issue of child trafficking. That seems like it should be a slam dunk for him to comment on and reverse course on. But the fact that he didn't means that he still stands by his belief that these predators should be granted that sort of that consideration. No, and in fact, I think there's a perfect cure for pedophilia that comes in the form of a 9mm pill. No, I mean, I'm maybe going over the top there, so sorry. Don't get me on that YouTube. I'm being hyperbolic. But let's see. So Malinowski served as the Human Rights Watch's director between 2001 and 2013, pushing the agenda of a nonprofit group that is praised for its humanitarian work but criticized for its alleged anti-Israel bias. Great, yeah, because of course all left-wing, they all are very homogenous in their causes. So the crime bill ended up passing both the House and the Senate via voice vote in 2006, indicating bipartisan support for the legislation. In addition to the National Sex Offender Registry, the bill also imposed tougher punishments for sex offenders by expanding the death penalty and requiring higher minimum sentencing for offenders. Malinowski's team opposed these tougher punishments as well, arguing that harsher sentences are arbitrary and excessively cruel. We're talking about child predators here. I don't think that there is an arbitrary punishment for that. Malinowski is running in a tough re-election campaign against GOP State Senator Tom Keene. Go get him, Keene. I don't know anything about you, but get this Malinowski guy out of office. But I introduced this video by talking about the slippery slope, and it's often listed as one of the logical fallacies, but especially when it comes to the left, it is not a logical fallacy whatsoever, because the left, progressives, they just pick a direction and they progress in that direction until they go off a cliff. They know no end. They do not know where to stop. That is why the slippery slope is absolutely applicable to left-wing principles and left-wing ideology. We saw back in the early 2000s, the right got ridiculed when we were worried that normalizing homosexuality could, and we said, what's next? We're going to normalize pedophilia? And we were laughed at. We were constantly mocked. I mean, endlessly. And then, of course, gay marriage passes, and before you could even blink your eyes after that, all of a sudden, they've moved on to transgenderism. Now, all of a sudden, there's no such thing as real gender. A man can be a woman can be a man, and there's 87 genders now. So much for that slippery slope fallacy, huh? Then it went to pushing transgender children, which is an offshoot of pedophilia, because kids should not even be focused on their sexuality. We're talking about prepubescent kids under the age of 10. We have seen children as young as 3 be pushed to transition by their parents. Why should you be pushing your 3-year-old child's sexuality and sexual identification? No, let these kids be kids. We heard about the story of James Younger, the 8-year-old kid in Texas whose mom is trying to get him to transition into a little kid named Luna, or a little girl named Luna, and the father has lost all rights to stop it from happening, despite the fact that little James Younger has said time and time again to other people, not his father, that he hates that his mother makes him dress like a girl and call himself Luna. This is a woman with some sort of mental illness, some sort of Munchausen syndrome, some transgender Munchausen syndrome that is pushing this on her child. And we've seen they're talking about giving kids puberty blockers so that they don't experience puberty at the right age, completely damaging their physical biology for the rest of their lives. And now we have seen pushes to normalize this pedophilia. In fact, back in 2013, HuffPo had to call Rush Limbaugh out for comparing gay marriage acceptance to pedophilia, and he talked about how there were articles normalizing it. There's a movement on to normalize pedophilia, and I guarantee you, your reaction to that is probably much the same as your reaction when you first heard about gay marriage. What has happened to gay marriage? It's become normal. In fact, with certain people in certain demographics, it's the most important issue in terms of who they vote for. So don't poo-poo. There's a movement to normalize pedophilia. Don't poo-poo it. These people behind it are serious, and you know the left as well as I do. They glom onto something and they don't let go. That is a very good way of putting it, Rush Limbaugh. They do. They glom onto an idea and they're like a dog with a bone. They sink their teeth in, and then they just rip society apart. Anybody who goes against them, they amass this political power, this cultural power, and they shame anybody. We've seen this with the LGBT, the whole alphabet community. I mean, they are mafioso-like in the way that they will try to character assassinate anybody who stands against them or any of their agenda. So you know how much the progress of how much progress the notion of gay marriage has made, so I'm just keeping you here on the cutting edge. Yeah. And, we've already seen, Slate put out an article a couple years ago that was about, I'm a pedophilia, not a monster, and things like that. I forget who else had an article about virtuous pedophiles. There was that TED Talk by German medical student, what was the name? Miram Haney or something. And she was talking about how we need to I forget what exactly she said in it, but it's something along the lines of we need to understand the pedophiles. No, we don't need to understand the pedophiles. They're sick and they're disgusting. We also saw recently that the UN recently placed a teen prostitution advocate for its top human rights post. A teen prostitution advocate. She had an article in Teen Vogue suggesting that teen girls try sex work. And that doesn't even. Teen Vogue is a whole other can of worms. That magazine, they put articles aimed towards young girls about all kinds of various sex acts. Why are you telling little girls about this? The left has no moral standard whatsoever. And yet they seem to think that they're morally superior to people who are, Christian right. They have their own religion. And it's a religion of nihilism. And they seem to think that this nihilism is best. It is about making sure that the most intersectional, the most deviant, the most ostracized, all get their place at the cost of the moral majority. This stuff has to end. We had this article from last year. Why is the LGBT media normalizing quasi-pedophilia? This is from Brad Palumbo. He says, people regularly mistake this one couple for father and son. That should be your first sign that something is wrong. Yes. According to a glowing profile from British LGBT media website Pink News, a 55-year-old man named Mark and a 22-year-old named Caleb have dated for almost 6 years, since Caleb was 17. Barely of the legal age of consent, under the legal age of consent in many places here in America. So, the two were initially in a sugar daddy arrangement, per Pink News, yet after finding a strong connection, they decided to become official. A sugar daddy arrangement, that essentially means that you had this, at the time, 50-year-old man paying for sex from a 17-year-old boy. That's... And we have these LGBTQ media. You notice how with the LGBT, they keep tacking on letters. They keep tacking on letters because it's become basically a catch-all for sexual deviancy. And that's why you've seen they now have a clinical, sanitized name for pedophiles, and that's MAPS, minor attracted persons. As if that they're trying to make an orientation out of it. No. A child does not have the ability to consent to that kind of activity. And the adult is disgusting for wanting them to. So with a quote from Caleb featured in the end, the puff piece tells us, puff piece, to keep your mind open and know that love comes in many shapes, forms, sizes, colors, and ages. That right there love comes in many ages. That is them trying to normalize, trying to prime our mentality for being okay with this kind of thing. We should never be okay with this thing. If you're watching this video, do not succumb to this pressure to ever think that this is normal. And this all started with the acceptance of of gay marriage. It started with the normalization of homosexuality. And we were absolutely right when we were concerned, okay, well, if we normalize this, then what's next? And it doesn't have to be that homosexuality and pedophilia are linked, even though there is research that shows that 1/3 of what was it? It was a family research council. So A new report published by the Family Research Council reveals that there is a body of evidence indicating a definite link between homosexuality and pedophilia. Statistics show that homosexual men, who represent less than 3% of the adult male population, commit a disproportionate number, 1/3 or more, of the cases of child sexual molestation. And this was back in 2002. So I can only imagine that with the normalization of homosexuality, that number is actually increased. But let's say that's not true. Let's say that's not true, that the homosexuality of it has nothing to do with the pedophilia of it. It is still about the fact that the progressive left, once they capture a win somewhere, they have to take it a step further. They have to keep going. Because they're not worried about the morality of any of their causes. They're not worried about whether anything is really truly acceptable. It's about getting another win, another notch on their belt, so to say. And so they will jump from homosexuality to transgenderism to pedophilia because they don't know how to put it down. They don't know how to they don't know how to end the fight and put the weapons down and stop fighting for more rights for crazier and crazier people. So this guy, Brad Palumbo, who I think is gay, says, the issue is not the couple's homosexuality. Rather, it's the disturbing attempt to normalize 30-year age gaps involving a middle-aged man prying on a teenage boy and possibly paying for him to have sex. Exactly. What is it? Yeah, that's what a sugar daddy is. Now, it'd be one thing if it was a huge gap between, say, a 30-year-old and a 60-year-old. Such an age gap relationship may be a bit odd, but it's not exploitative or predatory. No, it's not. Yet the imbalance of power and maturity gap between a grown man and a teenage boy is far too great for a healthy relationship to occur, making this instance a clear example of exploitation. Yes, the attempt to spin this as the latest update in the LGBTQIA plus game of alphabet soup is insane, and more importantly hurts our efforts to gain acceptance for same-sex relationships by lumping them in with sexual deviancy. Exactly, but they keep tacking on letters. You know, there's a big argument as well about whether the T's actually belong in the LGBTQ thing, because LG and B, it's about who you're attracted to, not what you identify as. They're two different things, but the like Rush Limbaugh said, they glom on. That's what the left does. They glom onto something and they don't let go. And they will berate us and try to ostracize and excommunicate us from polite society if we do not go along with whatever the new iteration of their agenda is. Well, I'm sorry. You can ostracize and excommunicate me all you want. I'm never going to get on board with this stuff. I'm never going to get on board with giving prepubescent kids hormone blockers. I'm never going to get on board with child drag queens. This whole Desmond is Amazing thing. They put him on Good Morning America with Michael Strahan. What the hell is Michael Strahan doing having a 10 or 11-year-old drag boy out there dancing all suggestively in his makeup? And it's disgusting. They're trying to normalize this. They want us to think, oh, it's not a big deal. I guarantee you, that kid's probably going to be dead before he reaches 21. But they don't care. They don't care. Not one bit. The LGBT media ostensibly exists to uplift sexual minorities, but it regularly does the opposite when it falls victim to the woke politics of the day. Exactly. And that goes back to that old quote, those who marry themselves to the spirit of the age find themselves a widow in the next. Very pertinent. Anyways, guys, that's the video. Lot to cover in this topic here, but go ahead and hit that like button if you haven't already. Share this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, because we all know it's voices like mine that are first to be taken out back in old Yeller by the folks at Big Tech. Also, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Parler at Ram Thorburn. Also on mindsandpilled.net if you're on there. Also at Ram Thorburn. And if you're interested in contributing to the channel, there are links to my Subscribestar, Patreon, and PayPal down in the description below. Anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.